every single person out there, they would come up with these algorithms and whatnot. Now we have them, running all of Wall Street, and it couldn't determine that Lyft report was wrong a couple of weeks ago and sent the shares of the stock up 60% on a typo.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. Hey, I've got Chris Markowski on with us. You find him at watchdogonwallstreet.com. Chris, you've been doing your show for better than 20 years. And hey, no one knows the games that Wall Street plays better than you, Chris. What my question for you right now, we talked about this a little bit pre-call. Wall Street likes the flavor of the month. Wall Street is like Baskin Robbins, 57 flavors, whatever. But AI right now is the flavor of the month. Maybe it's the flavor of the year. Maybe it's the flavor of the decade, Chris. We haven't seen stocks like this really since the dot-com bubble, but here we actually have companies that have a distinct difference. They actually make money. Is it a bubble or is it a super growth market? Is Tesla a bubble stock or is Tesla a growth stock now? Obviously, there's a bit of both here, isn't there?
Yeah, I thought you were talking about bubbles, and then I was actually looking into this. It was like a week or two ago. Bubbles going back, to the tulip bubble, and it's like, well, you got different type. You got bubble gum bubbles, and you've got bubbles that you had when you were blowing your kids. They're all different, and this one without a doubt is when a lot of people are making comparisons to the .com bubble, but the issue of the .com bubble was just that it was so much cheap money at the time that was in essence flowing into companies that if you took a look at the prospectus, you could almost set a date when they were going to run out of money. It was a burn rate. It was funny. You could calculate when these companies were going to go out of business based upon their model. We're talking about companies now that you can say that, take a look at the valuation and what they're valued at a certain period of time. You could say they're more expensive based upon history, but what do they do? They're not raising more money. They're actually buying back stock. Many of them are in many respects. Why would they be doing that if it was a bubble type of situation? And not to mention the order flow is it's incredible. I mean, you got to take a look at, what type of business these companies are going to be doing moving forward. And, when they talk about AI and everybody automatically thinks of NVIDIA and Google and various different things. I like people to kind of broaden their outlook and try to look at the companies that are going to benefit from this technology that are saying to themselves, okay, how am I going to be more productive? Or, my state is raising minimum wage to some ridiculous number where I can't stay in business or it's going to make it difficult for me to be profitable. How can I use this to be more productive? And that's what it is. AI, you got to look at it as a tool. Much like, again, when the internet first came out and the brilliant Paul Krugman thought it wouldn't much be anything about it. He said that at that point in time, but it ended up being an incredible tool that we all use, and it's embedded into our lives. And, as Warren Buffett actually talked about this, there's some things, that he had, throughout his life. I remember when a television first came out, he didn't have one in his house, and he never understood why anybody would ever want one or would never imagine having one. The same thing with the personal computer, that changes. Things are invented that you don't think you may need or want to have or whatever it may be. And then you find out all of a sudden, hey, you know what? I got to get that.
It's so true what you're saying there. And AI is going to be more profound than probably anything else, especially if they start. Look, the largest job category in the United States is driver. Over 10 million people are driving. And if they could really come up with the fully autonomous vehicle, which, look, Tesla's hitting some roadblocks now. Their stock has gotten slammed as a result. But overall, their AI for driving is pretty darn good. No one would believe 10 years ago that a car could do what their car is doing. But 10 million people who are like no longer having a job. That's a little worrisome, isn't it?
Yeah, well, again, this has happened throughout history as well. As new technologies, come in, and certain ones go by the wayside. It doesn't happen overnight. I think a great example of this is, I remember Obama, and he was being naive when he was talking about ATM machines and bank teller. I don't have that many bank tellers anymore. Actually, banks hired more people after they got rid of the tellers. They went and did other types of things within, that business, and more jobs ended up being created, even though certain ones were eliminated. It goes, the old Joseph Schumpeter creative destruction also happens with the labor force as well.
Yeah, it's true, but this kind of goes further than anything else we've ever encountered, though, right? I remember in college, the professor said, the first industrial revolution, basically helped man's hands. Did away with the need for his body in a lot of professions.
Yeah,
right. And they were saying the second industrial revolution going to do away with his mind. That never really happened.
No, but
now it's really looking like this thing. Obviously, it's here to stay. There's no question about that. But it goes further than anything else that we've ever encountered, right?
I think so. I mean, you talked about with the cars, the autonomous driving. I don't know. Maybe I'm a scaredy cat. I can't see myself ever getting into a car that I didn't have some sort of control over. And I've talked about this to people. I said the only way I see that eventually working is that every car has to be autonomous, so they're all communicating with one another. So, I teach my kids to drive, and I say, you see that person over there? I know that person can't see me behind that corner. How does the AI ever pick up on that, or that car? I guess it could eventually. I just think that's going to be a long way to come. And I think people like having some sort of sense of control with things like that. But, and in certain, type tasks that one might describe, even though that there's a thought process involved, might be more menial based. I mean, I think back to when I, started in this business, 30 something years ago, and, what was involved in running, my business, and the sales assistants, and the tickets, and the this and that, and all that stuff went away. And, life moves on, and, I press a couple buttons, everything's in front of me now. I don't have a book of business that was written in, with ink on holding pages or anything like that anymore. And, I don't need as many people to handle all that. Again, things are going to change. And I do think, again, other jobs will be created.
Hey, interesting thing. My friend got his start on Wall Street before they had calculators. And his job was using an adding machine to calculate accrued interest on bond sales and purchases. And he was a mathematical genius, so he could do it literally in his head. But most of the process was proofing what your prior work to make sure you didn't screw up, because one decimal point could really mess things up. And now, basically, those streets around Wall Street, Broad and Wall, were all back office operations. There is no back office, right?
We're all empty.
It doesn't exist.
It's empty still to this day. I mean, going back to the 1990s, when it started clearing out, still most of those buildings down there are empty. But you got to think about another sense too. So you had a mathematical genius that was wasting his talent, calculating interest. He could have been doing something much, much better with his time, quite frankly, than doing that.
Hey, it's so now though. Look, AI definitely can underwrite mortgages better than any human being, right? And it can use more data. Right now, you disclose all your info, and then they run a credit report, and they do a public record search. It can go way more in depth than that, come up with new models, likelihood of default, and really up the quality of the loans being written.
Yeah.
What about analysts in your business, right? Do you see the day when the AI just takes over for them?
I don't. Again, it depends on the type of analytical work. I remember I said I'm it's like going back to the old days when I met the lead retail analyst from Goldman Sachs back in the 1990s, and this idiot ever stepped foot in a Walmart. And I mean, what good is this person? What does he know? Does it understand, some of these things? Yeah. I do think that you can have as much technology as you want. Trying to make heads or tails in how the economy is going to work and the trillions of transactions that take place every day. It's like trying to understand, where leaves are going to fall off the trees in the fall. It's very, very difficult. And it's, like I said, it's garbage in, garbage out as well with this. And, I'm kind of old school when it comes to my, investment philosophy and in regards to how to go about looking at companies. Will this thing be able to determine what people's tastes are going to be or what's going to happen and adjust that? Don't know. I don't know. Sometimes you can get information paralysis too, where you get, too much that overloads. And how do you adjust for that? And sometimes a little bit for intuition and experience as well, and learning from mistakes. And I don't know where that's going to go. I really don't. But every single person out there, they would come up with these algorithms and whatnot. Now we have them, running all of Wall Street, and it couldn't determine that Lyft report was wrong a couple of weeks ago and sent the shares of the stock up 60% on a typo. Which I find fascinating. I said, you couldn't figure that one out? I mean, I said, come on. And it was just obviously wrong, but the brilliant algorithm, they couldn't figure it out.
Hey, well, maybe the best place we could invest in AI is with replacing our politicians with it. Because look, the AI isn't going to take a bribe, I don't think. It wouldn't know what to do with one if it got it. It can't be dumber than the people who are running things now, right? And presumably it can't be pressured. I guess it could be like Google with their new AI thing where it just is biased against everything.
Yeah.
And maybe you want some of those AIs who are biased against everything there, so you get a mix of opinions, right? I mean, hey, I live in Florida. As far as driving goes, man, that car is going to do a better job than 90% of the people here on the road, Chris.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm moving back to Florida in this fall, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And I'm familiar. But again, will the AI be able to determine? I was taught back in driver's ed when I was in high school, 7th grade, that if you see somebody that is hunched over the wheel like that and wearing a hat, you want to, pass them.
Give them room. Hey, my friend, pilot for 45 years for a major airline, and, we're driving in my Tesla, and he goes, I would never trust that thing, to drive. And I said, yeah, well, but you're up in the sky there and you're using the autopilot. He said, yeah, but we have rules up there. We don't have any rules down on the earth here. At ground level. It's so true, So, but potential to profit here is vast. I was just in Thailand, and I stopped off in the airport in Singapore, and it was like 5 a.m. when usually you have a cleaning crew out there. They had a robot cleaning the floors. And I got to Thailand in Bangkok, and they had a robot cleaning the floors. So that's just one example of a job that probably, we've had the vacuum robots, the iRobot and all that for years, but now actually commercial application. And that place, Chris, was spotless, Singapore.
Yeah. Well, look again, they're gonna beat the hell out of you if you drop a piece of gum on the ground.
Yeah, don't fly the toilet.
You're not dealing with JFK, which is, oh my God, it's like a national embarrassment when you fly in for crying out loud.
Oh man, well,
ball of wax.
Slowly but surely they're improving it. Delta's new terminal opened. LaGuardia got replaced, and
LaGuardia is better, but JFK's got a long way to go.
Yeah, well, Terminal 4 is good. Terminal 4 is okay, and Terminal 5 is okay. So, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It's such a zoo. But hey, maybe people won't need to travel as much because you'll just get into the metaverse and it'll be like being there, right?
No, it'll never be like me there. No, I'm booking my Greece trip I'm there every August, so I'm there.
Okay. So to investors, getting a more serious note, what do you think the biggest challenge moving forward for investors is? Is it inflation? Is it geopolitical instability? Is it our own political instability in the United States? Is it kind of degradation of morals and values? What do you think the biggest challenge to investors really is out there, Chris?
Investors are always the biggest challenge is used to themselves, and getting nuts with FOMO with certain things at certain points in time, and not being disciplined with strategy. Things are gonna come and they're gonna go. I think inflation is a problem for everyone, and I quite frankly I don't think it's really going anywhere. And you take a look moving forward. You look at our national debt, close to $34 trillion at this point in time, where we were adding about $1 trillion every 100 days. That's a real issue moving forward. I mean, Taleb even talked about that. He called it, it's not even a black swan. It's a white swan. It's as plain as day. And we're doing this to our kids and our grandkids. And, we've got the two leading presidential candidates right now that don't want to address the issue. They don't want to talk about the issue. They don't want to talk about entitlements or any of these things. They're pretending like the problem is not there. If you're not aware of this, I mean, I wrote about, the Social Security and the Ponzi scheme that it is back in the 1990s. And this is all coming home to roost. It wasn't dealt with. I mean, the last time we tried to deal with it was under George W. Bush. It was actually a good policy decision in his administration, and got shot down because he spent all his political capital in Iraq. And McConnell says, I can't get this through because we're wasting, in essence, we're wasting money over there and we're busy fighting this stupid war. So, again, these are real problems moving forward, and nobody wants to really deal with them at this point in time.
Well, maybe the AI will figure it out, Chris.
Figuring that one out.
You put the AI in charge of all government spending, okay? Just put it in charge, because it can't do any worse than the guys who are doing it now.
Yeah, I need Rand Paul or somebody that actually makes some sort of sense in understanding, these problems and how they exist. Budget.
So if Social Security is going to go bust, maybe we need to be investing in dog food manufacturers, right? Because they're not going to be, seniors we won't be able to afford food. We'll have to go for dog food, right?
Well, today's day and age, the dog food, I mean, it's like gourmet. I mean, people like their dogs. Like their dogs more than they do people. What was that from, Gordon Gecko from Wall Street? What he said, the thing about wasps, love animals, hate people. Society we're living in.
Yeah, it's great. Well, hey, appreciate you coming on. And it's always fun talking with you. I know you always do have your hand on the pulse, or your finger on the pulse. You find Chris at watchdogonwallstreet.com. And don't forget his radio show and podcast. We have a link to it in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for your free newsletter. Chris, really been a pleasure, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.